right, hi everyone. Welcome to another installment of our Abnormally Normal video series here at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. My name is Jacklyn. I'm one of the keepers here in Scutes Family Gallery, and this is Shiva, our Burmese python. So he's out for a little bit of exploration here in Scutes Family Gallery. And so this is not something that you would necessarily see every single day, but we do like to have him come out and hang out with guests about twice a month when we are cleaning his exhibit. He's a pretty friendly guy. He weighs around 80 pounds. He can be between 80 and 90 pounds, and he's 14 feet long. So he's a really big snake, and despite that, he's pretty comfortable around people, so he likes to come out and hang out every now and then. He is a special coloration of Burmese python, and so this is not the color that you would see them in the wild, very often at least. And he is a special kind that has less pigmentation. So these guys are pretty common in the pet trade. So people like to kind of breed snakes to have fancy, pretty colors, and I do think he's pretty beautiful with his yellows. And so I always like to talk about how when these guys hatch, they are around a foot long. And within a year or two, they can be 10 feet long. So just make sure if you're looking into getting a pet snake that you know exactly what species it is and exactly how big it's gonna get, because it would be pretty inconvenient to have a 14-foot long snake instead of a foot long snake. I'm just gonna readjust him briefly because it looks like he might be able to sneak under that door. So we're gonna see if he wants to explore in this direction. So as Shiva is exploring, you can see, probably not right now because I'm in the way, but you can see him sticking his tongue out. So snakes have a lot of really crazy cool adaptations that help them hunt their food. And so not to say that Shiva's hunting right now, but he is definitely exploring, right? So he's sticking that tongue out to smell. And so he's trying to figure out what things are around him using his sense of smell. Sticks that tongue out, gets some scent particles, brings it back in. He's trying to figure out what's happening. Really trying to figure out what that camera is. We'll see if he explores it a little bit. They also have really cool heat sensing pits. So I was talking about different things that snakes have that help them hunt. So you can see in the front of his face, there's some little pits kind of up there on his nose. And those are heat sensing, so they help him track down things, especially warm-blooded things that he might hunt. We feed him rabbits here at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, but in their natural habitat, which is, by the way, in India and Southeast Asia, they might be able to find any variety of critters to eat, and pretty much anything that they can safely fit in their mouth and hunt, they will. However, they don't have to eat very often because they eat gigantic meals. So if you think about what it would look like for him to eat a rabbit, if we ate something that big in proportion to us, it would be like us eating like a cantaloupe or a watermelon or something like that whole. So that would be a gigantic meal for us. And because these guys are also, you might have heard that snakes are cold-blooded, they have different metabolisms than us. They really don't have to eat as often as we do. And I think what he's doing right now actually is seeking out that little bit of sunlight that's coming through the door. So because they're cold-blooded, they use their environments to control their heat. So the way I like to explain it is that they are more like a thermostat, right? And we are like a furnace that's always on. So they're a lot more efficient. So if they are in a situation where they don't have quite as much food available to them, then they could just hang out in a cooler spot, and that would make their metabolism be a little bit lower. Or if they wanted to digest a giant meal that they just ate, then they could find a nice sunny spot to increase that metabolism and digest their food. He wants to check out this direction no matter what I suggest that he do, which is fine. Sneaking over here to our tree monitor exhibit. Ooh. I'm going to take just a second and readjust him more thoroughly. I'm so sorry. Okay, he's gonna come over here. Woo. Wanna go this way, bud? He doesn't, he wants to go this way, that's okay. We like to give our animals a lot of choice here at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, so he's getting the choice to come right at the camera right now, which is a cool shot for you guys. So Shiva actually just got done shedding his skin, which is a crazy thing that snakes do that you might know. And so you're seeing him at his most beautiful right now. He's got some brand new fresh skin, so good timing. And this is part of his shed that he just shed. And you will see that it's kind of in pieces, but he shed overnight, so we're thinking that he probably kind of was hanging out on top of his own shed. But here you can see kind of the different types of scales that they have. So these are the ones that I wanted you to see. They're really big. These are going to be on his belly. So as you see him moving around, the way he's able to move without any feet is partially those big rectangular scales that are on his belly. Also, snakes have a crazy amount of muscles in their body. So a lot of what you're seeing is muscle, and a lot of what makes up their whole body is muscle, to the extent that some of their internal organs and things, what is that? Is that in your way? Some of their organs are actually different because they're so long and skinny than you would expect in any other vertebrate. So some snakes will have one really big long lung and one really, really tiny small lung, when normally, like we have two lungs that are the same size. So they've got some really weird anatomy because of their long, skinny bodies. Another question that I get about snakes pretty often is if they're one big long tail, and the answer is no. So I'm actually sitting over here by Shiva's tail, and you should sort of be able to see there's kind of a difference in how thick his body is, starting about right here. So right here is actually where his tail starts. So after their cloaca is going to be their tail. So they aren't a big long tail, even though they sort of look like it. I get it. So in Colorado, we're not so lucky to have such awesome big snakes kind of just cruising around out there. But we do have some really cool native snakes. And I always like to talk about how the best way to interact with snakes is to not when they're out in the wild. So especially if you don't want to get bit, the best thing to do is to give them their space. Snakes tend to bite because they're feeling a little scared. So as long as you keep that snake feeling safe, they're not very likely to bite you. They're going to bite in self-defense. They are smart enough to know we're not a food item. Even a snake this big, we wouldn't be a very good food item. So also, we're pretty lucky here in Colorado because our most dangerous venomous snakes are rattlesnakes, right? And rattlesnakes are really polite because they rattle before they're thinking about biting you. So we're pretty lucky here as far as the native snakes that we have. And I kind of attribute that to part of the reason I'm not not afraid of snakes so much, because I was lucky enough to grow up here in Colorado. So like I was saying earlier, these guys are native to India and Southeast Asia. So they don't really have a whole lot of natural predators because of their huge size, at least at a full-grown level. But they do share some habitat with tigers, so that might be one of their only real threats in their native habitat. Also maybe like a hungry leopard or a really brave leopard might try to go for one of these guys. They're not the biggest climbers, so you can see that he's kind of checking out some vertical space, but might not be super successful at climbing up there because he's so heavy. But he's definitely checking it out. This is the side of our chameleon exhibit, so you might want to go check out if our chameleon would be a good meal, but we're not going to let him do that. All right. so I think it's about time that Shiva can go back into his exhibit. So we have 3 keepers here, and we use 3 folks to carry him, just like I was saying earlier, to try to make sure that we support a lot of his body weight. So this is my coworker Bruce, and then we also have Amber, and we're gonna pick him up and put him back in his enclosure so that he can explore in there. So this is not something that we do super frequently. Like I was saying earlier, we handle him about twice a month so that we can clean his exhibit. We'll kind of let him slither on back in there. And with some of our other snakes, they're actually trained to shift out of their exhibits voluntarily. So a lot like you would think some mammals here are trained, our snakes are actually trained too, which is pretty crazy. They're pretty smart. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us and for learning some things about Shiva, our awesome Burmese python. We hope to see you soon.